Welcome to Dread Pirates Really Quick Reviews, where we give a spoiler-free rundown and reading recommendation for pulp stories. Fantasy, sci-fi, horror, short, long, indie, literary, whatever. If it's fiction that sticks, the Dread Pirate wants it. The time? The Roaring Twenties. The place? Tampico, Mexico, a town languishing in the last days of the oil boom. For people willing to work, work can still be found, but the pay dwindles with each excursion. Those who are going to be rich are already rich. Those who are poor will stay that way. But old-timers tell of a great treasure, abandoned by the Spanish conquistadors somewhere in the Sierra Madre mountain range. There for the taking. What ensues is a quest for gold, fraught with peril. But for those questing, the greatest threat is also the very reason they went, though none will admit it to each other: greed. But first, some background on the author and story. B. Traven is the pen name of the author, but no one knows who he really was. The best guess is that he's an author of German origin due to his works being translated from German to English. He also likely lived in Mexico, which is the setting for much of the fiction attributed to him, or her, but likely him. While his novels gained huge popularity, he was a private person, dealing with the public only through literary agents, and is famously quoted as saying, "The creative person should have no other biography than his works." Clearly, this was a person not interested in the fame of being a popular novelist. His most enduring work is The Treasure of the Sierra Madre, though its popularity is somewhat faded as we wade further into the 21st century. It endures in the cultural zeitgeist largely because of the iconic film starring Humphrey Bogart, which won 3 Academy Awards. It's ranked 30th on the American Film Institute's top 100 films. Even if you haven't seen it, you've probably heard the one-liner,
"We don't need no badges. I don't have to show you any stinking badges."
But what about the book itself? Well, I'm not going to spoil the details of the plot because ultimately this book does earn my recommendation. I do think you should read this book. However, what I do want to discuss is the way Traven wove the motif of greed and the inescapable tragedy of it in human nature so well into the story. Every character reflects the trait of greed in some way, from protagonists, not heroes, I won't say there are heroes in this story, to side characters. What really elevates this simple idea is how well Traven differentiates the concept of greed in each character. A lot of times, especially to the characters themselves, greed manifests initially as something good, like clawing out of poverty, or loyalty to family, or country, or even romantic love. But as each character's story resolves, they inevitably carry their plans 10 steps too far, and we see ultimately the layers get peeled back, and greed is at the heart of every motivation. That greed is inescapable pervades each story, and the concept of greed almost becomes a character in and of itself, like a devil on the shoulder or a presence lurking behind every set piece, every conversation. It's fantastically done. Now, you might think this story is a moral tragedy or several fables masquerading as adventure fiction, and you'd be right. However, I won't say the conclusion of the story is entirely bleak. I won't spoil it, but Traven does appear to offer one avenue of escape from this otherwise inescapable flaw of man. So, does The Treasure of the Sierra Madre earn a reading recommendation? That's an unreserved yes. Traven's novel is truly timeless, and elevated above its simple action plot by the author's ruminations on human nature and how that human nature rears its head in business, government, etc. The story and the author's message stuck with me, which is the ultimate hallmark of good literature. It resonates with the reader. I read this novel at the beginning of the year, and we're now in May, and I still find myself thinking about this story, even some of the flashbacks, the stories within the stories. It's a pulp story with the moral gravitas of mythology, and Traven pairs the two excellently. Some of the philosophical points made by the author about greed are so well woven. Seriously, some of the quotes in this book are spot on philosophical indictments of humanity, which in my mind never came off as preachy or out of left field to what's happening in the story, and that's hard to do. For instance, the narrator says at one point, this is a direct quote, "So far, they had never had anything of value to protect against thieves. Since they now owned certain riches, their worries about how to protect them had started. The world no longer looked to them as it had a few weeks ago. They had become members of the minority of mankind." And then one character is arguing with another, so this is dialogue. That character says, "It may be crooked to say what I said, but it's surely more crooked to have such thoughts and not admit them." this being an insinuation that the other character is behaving underhandedly, that greed is driving their true intentions, which is true, although it's true of the character speaking as well, and basically everyone else in the book. Anyway, moralizing, philosophizing, all done quickly and seamlessly within the narration and the dialogue. Also, the pacing is tight. The Kindle version, which is what I read it on, is 308 pages, and while that can be a little bit on the long side for adventure fiction, especially alongside serial adventure magazines and pulps of the time, Traven keeps events moving. Even when there are lengthy flashbacks, and there are quite a few, events happen and people do things in direct order. I didn't feel like my time was being wasted, which is rare as a reader with a 21st century attention span reading a nearly 100-year-old novel. The one point against this is the characters at the beginning do take a little while to actually begin treasure hunting. There's a fair amount of setup. And if you're sitting down to read this novel, you probably are reading it because you want some treasure hunting adventure fiction. That doesn't happen right away, and that was the only part where I felt like, come on, get to it. But that's nitpicking and very subjective. I tend to be harder on pace and number of pages than most readers I talk to, so you'll probably be fine. So that's it. Treasure of the Sierra Madre earns an unreserved recommendation. Everyone should read this book. So what about your thoughts? I haven't seen the movie. Is the movie worth seeing? It won Academy Awards. It's on the Film Institute's Top 100. How does it stack up to the book? Does it age as well as its source material, which I think the book has aged incredibly well? Would a modern audience still enjoy it? Let me know. And until next time, keep reading.